On October 7, 1913, Ford's entire Highland Park, Michigan automobile plant is run on a continuously moving assembly line for the first time. A young Henry Ford worked for Thomas Edison in the 1890s, and they became lifelong friends. But Ford left Edison in 1899 to start a car company. That company failed in 1901. He then started another auto company, but left it in 1902. Interestingly, the remains of that second company eventually became Cadillac. The third time was the charm for Henry Ford with the Ford Motor Company, which was incorporated in June 1903. Ford soon built two four-wheeled vehicles, both called the Ford 999. Each had a large four-cylinder piston engine and a wooden chassis with no body and no hood. Steering was done with a pivoting metal bar, kind of like the handlebar on a bicycle. In January 1904, Ford took one of his 999s to the frozen surface of Lake St. Clair near Detroit, where he set a new land speed record hitting 91.37 miles per hour. Ford's record was broken just a month later, but he got needed publicity that helped catapult him to success with the Model T, which was released less than 5 years later in October 1908. Before then, automobiles were so expensive that only the wealthy could afford them. When he introduced the Model T, Ford declared, quote, "I will build a motor car for the great multitude," end quote. And he did. The Model T was durable, easy to operate, and was originally priced at $850, about one-third the price of most other cars. But it was still too pricey for most people. Ford understood that he needed to increase productivity to lower costs, and thereby reduce the sales price to something nearly everyone could afford. The immediate forerunner of Ford's assembly line could be found in the meatpacking industry, particularly in Chicago and Cincinnati. Those plants used overhead trolleys to take the meat from one worker to the next, as slaughtered animals were butchered, dressed, and packed. Ford took what he learned from the meat packers and installed a moving assembly line to manufacture flywheel magnetos for his Model T. Rather than have each man assemble a magneto by himself, the process was divided into 29 operations performed by 29 workers spaced along a moving belt. Soon, magneto assembly time dropped from 20 minutes to just 5 minutes. Ford's engineers expanded the assembly line experiment over the following months, placing the motor and then the transmission on moving assembly lines. The final component, the chassis, was added to the system on October 7, 1913, positioning the entire Model T manufacturing process on an assembly line. It reduced the time for chassis assembly from 12 hours to a mere 93 minutes. The increase in productivity drastically reduced Ford's costs. By 1916, the car's price had dropped by more than half to just $360. Ford was eventually producing a Model T every 24 seconds, and the price plunged to below $300. By the time the company stopped producing the iconic vehicle in 1927, Ford had manufactured more than 15 million Model Ts, accounting for nearly half the cars sold in the entire world to that date. It would be 45 years in 1972 before the Volkswagen Beetle surpassed the production total of Ford's legendary Model T. Here are other events that happened today in history. In 1571, Allied forces known as the Holy League defeat the Ottoman Turks in the Battle of Lepanto. In 1763, King George III issues a proclamation prohibiting settlement west of the Appalachians. In 1916, Georgia Tech defeats Cumberland 222-0 in college football's most lopsided game. In 1985, Palestinian terrorists hijacked the Italian cruise ship Achille Lauro near Alexandria, Egypt. In 2001, 3 weeks after 9/11, a US-led coalition begins attacks on Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. In 2003, Arnold Schwarzenegger is elected governor of California after the recall of Gray Davis. In 2023, Hamas launches a surprise attack against Israel, killing soldiers and civilians and taking hostages. And now it's time for our Today in History quiz. Where did the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 begin? A bakery? A meatpacking plant? A barn? Or an abandoned building? Think you know the answer? Drop your guesses in the comments below. Find out if you're right next time on Today in History. You made it through Today in History. Nice work. Now treat yourself. Click the video on the right for what happened yesterday in history. Still can't get enough? The link on the left's got the whole playlist buffet. Want to make history a daily habit? Click my face in the middle to subscribe.